We love you, Jesus, and there is no name higher than your name. Glory to you, Jesus. Amen.
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 Hallelujah.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Jireh, you are enough, and I will be content in every circumstance. You are Jireh. You are enough. It says we'll be content in every circumstance. Isn't that wild? Think about that. That means good times. That means not when things are going great, but even when they don't appear to be going as we would like. And that is such a good segue into what the Lord has laid on my heart today. You know, it's been a fantastic year. As a matter of fact, many of you were here at the beginning. Lightburst, I remember you coming in before we even had our first service, and you know, it was just neat to meet somebody from the other side of the world. You know, I mean, here in Horizons, and it was like we were interacting face to face, and you know, it was the technology that allowed us to do all this. But it's been a great year. And if you remember the first service that we had, and honestly, this is really the theme, and has been the theme. But you remember that first service we had was all about God placing a purpose in each one of our hearts. He put something there that's unique to you, Lightburst, and to you, Diener, and you, Art Girl, and you, Mikey, and all of us here. There's something there's something unique that God has purpose for each one of us. Before we were born, He whispered that purpose to us, and He put that inkling in our heart. And a lot of times it seemed crazy. Matter of fact, if you had told me 2 years ago I'd be standing up here in a room full of people from across the U.S. and across the globe, speaking as if they were right next door, I would have told you were crazy. I mean, I would have. It just didn't. It just seemed like a pipe dream. God had put that vision there, but it didn't make any sense at the time. And then, as I started sharing people, as a matter of fact, the story I'm going to read today is out of Genesis, and we're going to read in Genesis 37, 39, 40, and 41. But very much like this young man we're going to be reading about, I was very naive. And I told a lot of people this vision that God had placed in my heart. And you know what? A lot of people that mentored me, a lot of people that I considered close friends, told me I was absolutely nuts and this VR thing was of the devil. And yet, throughout the time, we've seen lives changed. Well, very similar, this young man that we're going to be talking about, he went off and told his whole family what God had shared with him in a dream. And well, it didn't work out so well to him. At least it didn't appear to work out so well to him. And that's where I want to loop back around to the purpose and vision that God places in your heart. Is He still more than enough when the circumstances don't seem like it's lining up? When it appears the circumstances aren't what God promised you, are we going to be faithful to see it through? Are we going to be faithful to keep on marching, to keep on serving the Lord, to keep on trusting the Lord, and keep on loving the Lord, even when the world tells us we're crazy, even when all the evidence in front of us says there's no way it can ever happen? Because that's what happened here. So I'm going to read a little bit, and I'm going to go back and we're going to talk about the story of Joseph and the coat of many colors. And that's just where it started. It started with a vision. It started with a dream, much like this church. It was a vision for Art Girl and a dream for Art Girl. It was a vision for me, and so in verse 1 of 37, now Jacob lived in the land where his fathers had lived, as a stranger in the land of Canaan. Those are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when he was 17 years of age, so he was still a young man, only 17, was pasturing flocks with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpho. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names, but Zilpha, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. So basically, what happened is his brothers are out tending the sheep, and Jacob tells his son Joseph, "Hey, why don't you go check up on them, see how they're doing?" And he comes back and says, "Man, these guys, you're never going to believe this. They are not taking care of business." So Now Israel loved Joseph more than all the other sons because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat or a multicolored tunic, basically a coat, right? He was this. Sorry. And his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Then Joseph had a dream. He had a vision. He had a purpose that God showed him. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. Now keep in mind, some things when God tells us, others aren't going to want to join us. Others aren't going to want to be a part of it, and that's okay. It's not necessarily for them, and sometimes they just simply don't understand. And sometimes they're not where we're at, and they don't get it. They are jealous, right? So this dream, he said to them, "Please listen to this dream I have had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf stood up, and also remained standing, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." Now you can imagine, this did not please the brothers. Okay, they his brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us, or are you going to rule over us?" Sorry, I'm having trouble reading with the headset on. Well, I'm going to go ahead and paraphrase because I'm having trouble reading my iPad with the headset today. Sometimes it's hard for me to focus. I'm getting older and I need readers, and I can't use readers while I'm in the headset. So I'm just going to go ahead and paraphrase a little bit today. But can you imagine this dream? This dream is where Joseph's out tending his sheep, and his one sheep raises up on its back legs, and all his brother's sheep immediately bow down. And his brothers get it. They understand immediately what that means. And they're like, "Wait a second, you're telling me that little scrawny you that we already hate, you're going to be in charge of us?" "Oh, wait, no. Do you mean to tell us, you're not even going to be in charge of us, you're going to rule, you're going to put your thumb on us, basically. We're going to have to do what you..." I don't believe that for a minute. And all that did was fuel their hate. That just fueled their hate, right? Well, then Joseph, well, unfortunately, he didn't learn the first time because he had another dream. And this time, and I'm going to give you the interpretation of the dream, but this time the dream basically was also about their father and mother. And at this point, Jacob kind of says, "Son, hey, what are you talking about? You know what? Why don't you just keep that to yourself?" And now keep in mind, I am paraphrasing here, right? But Jacob kept it in mind. He says he literally kept it in his mind. He remembered those words. Well, some time goes by, and Jacob sends the brothers back out to tend the sheep again. And he says, "Joseph, hey, go check on them. Go see if they're really doing what they're supposed to." So Joseph, he's happy-go-lucky. God just spoke to him, told him this amazing dream where he's going to be in charge of his brothers, and not only his brothers, but his father and mother, and apparently a lot more. So here's Joseph in this multicolored coat that his dad made him, just kind of skipping along, and his brothers see him from off in the distance. "Hey, look, it's him. It's our brother Joseph." The one who thinks he's going to be all high and mighty. "Hey, you know what? We should just get rid of him. Matter of fact, we should kill him." Then one of the brothers, Reuben, steps up and says, "No, we can't kill him. He is our brother after all." And so they're like, "Well, fine. There's a pit right here. We'll just throw him in this pit. We'll just get rid of him. Maybe we'll tell Dad he died." And Reuben's like, "Oh, we can go back and rescue him later. We'll let him sit and think about what he said a little while." Well, now, like I said, I'm paraphrasing here, and I will be honest with you, I don't know how, but somehow Reuben's out of the picture for a second, because the other brothers get together, and some Ishmaelites come, and they're traitors. And they're like, "You know what? Reuben's right. We're not going to kill him. What good would it do to kill him? Let's sell him. We can make some money off this guy." So they do. They sell him, and here Joseph is begging, hey, don't do this, don't do this. But they sell him, and Joseph ends up getting sold to a man named Potiphar in Egypt. Now, Potiphar is Pharaoh's right-hand man. He is the captain of the guard. Okay? So let's bounce back for a second. Joseph's brothers take Joseph's coat. They strip him of his coat right before he leaves, and they rip it. And they take goat's blood and they splatter it on the coat. And they take it to their dad and they say, "Hey, Dad, I think this is your son's, but we really don't know. Can you identify this for us?" And of course, Jacob immediately thinks the worst. "Oh no, my son, he's missing. The animals have torn him to shreds." And so he rips his clothes, which is the tradition back then, and he mourns for several days. All the hand, Joseph's in Egypt. He's now a slave to the captain of the guard. But God has his hand on Joseph. See, Joseph, he remembers his dreams. He doesn't know how it's going to work out. He has no clue how all this is going to play out, but Joseph is still a man of faith, and he still feared and loved the Lord through all this. And it's very evident through reading the scripture that he loved the Lord. Apparently his dad had taught him right. Okay? And so God shows favor to Joseph. And Joseph ends up becoming in charge of everything that Potiphar has. And I can only imagine that Potiphar, being the captain of the guard, was gone quite a bit from his house. So Potiphar says, "Hey, everything I have is yours to do with as you will. You take care of my affairs while I'm taking care of the king's affairs." And so this goes on for some time. I don't believe it says exactly how long, but it's a good while. Well, now keep in mind, Joseph, he's an Israelite. He was a worker. He tended sheep with his brothers. He now is a slave. Even though he's a high-powered slave, he's a slave, so he's doing physical labor as well, right? So Joseph is a strapping young lad, and Potiphar's wife happens to notice it. And I'm sure it doesn't help that Potiphar's away a lot. But she entices Joseph. "Hey, my husband's gone. Why don't we go back and do our own thing?" And Joseph's like, "Are you crazy? Everything I have, everything that Potiphar has is mine, except you. You're his wife. But he's trusted me with all this, and you think I'm going to betray his trust for you? No." Well, this goes on several times. It happens. We don't know how many times, but several times it happens. One day Joseph makes a mistake, and this is a good point here. Be careful what vulnerable positions you put yourself in, because Joseph walks in the house and no other servants are present, only Potiphar's wife. Well, Potiphar's wife tries to seduce Joseph again, and this time she grabs him by the coat and pulls off his coat, or his cloak. Joseph immediately realizes nobody's around, and he does what he should do. He took off running. He left his cloak. He got out of there as fast as he could. Well, the second Potiphar's wife realizes that she's got Joseph's cloak. She kind of freaks out a little bit. She doesn't want to get found out. So what does she do? "Help! He tried to rape me. He tried to take advantage of me." She tells all the guards. Well, then Potiphar comes home. And as anybody can imagine, Potiphar is furious. Now keep in mind, he's the captain of the guard. So what's he do? He throws Joseph in jail, but not just any prison. Because he's the captain of the guard, he throws him in the same prison where the king's prisoners are. I don't mean the general population of prisoners. I mean the one that the king has personally said, "You're going." And over the years, once again, Joseph finds favor. Why? Just like he did in Potiphar. He went from being a slave, thrown into a pit, to a slave, to rising up. A, because Joseph's faithful and does what he knows to do. And B, and this is more important, because he found favor with the Lord. He obeyed the Lord. He didn't lose heart. He didn't lose faith. And so guess what? Some time goes by, and now he's in charge of all of the prisoners. He's the person that basically runs the prison, kind of like he ran Potiphar's house. God gifted him and gave him a special gifting to be able to take control of things, take charge of things, and then have good outcomes. Well, while his time in prison, the king throws in prison with him, a cupbearer and a baker. and they're in prison, and they both have dreams. Now, because I'm paraphrasing, and I can't read it exactly, you're gonna have to bear with me a little bit. But basically, the cupbearer goes first, and he tells about this dream he has, and he says, "But I don't know what it means." And matter of fact, the baker had a dream, and he didn't know what it means either. And Joseph just says, "Well, dreams are for God to interpret. Tell me your dream." Once again, he gives credit to the Lord right there. He gives credit to God. He gives credit where credit's due, which tells me he doesn't lose faith in God. He also doesn't take a prideful stance that, "Oh, I can do that." No, he says, who can do it? God can do it. So basically, the dream is where the cupbearer is serving the king. He's filling his cup with wine, and there's, I believe there's three bushels of wheat that he turns into wine, if I'm not mistaken. And so he says, "What does that mean?" He says, "Well, that's easy." He says, "What that means is in 3 days, the king's going to come back and he's going to restore you like you were never in prison, like nothing ever had. You're going to be restored to your rightful place." Now, the baker, seeing that this was favorable, said, "Hey, go ahead and tell me what my dream means." Well, the dream was very similar, only instead of the wine being poured out and being served, everything pretty much turned to ruin. And he says, "Well, what's it mean?" And Joseph says, "Well, in 3 days, sorry about your bad luck, buddy. I know I gave him good news, but you got some bad news." He says, "In 3 days, the king's going to chop off your head and impale you." Wow. Talk about a blow, right? Now, Joseph asks the cupbearer, says, "Hey, when you find favor and fortune, your good fortune, please remember me." And the cupbearer says, "Absolutely, I will." Well, 3 days later, just as Joseph said, the cupbearer gets restored, and the baker, yeah, not so good for him, off the head, right? Now, I'm going to interpret this to mean that what I think probably happened, and this is just Andy's personal opinion here. I'm pretty sure the cupbearer and the baker, one of the two of them messed up, and the king didn't know who it was. Now, this is just me thinking here, right? But chances are that's what happened. And when he figured it out 3 days later, that's why the cupbearer got restored, and the baker, who they obviously worked side by side, well, he got the axe. So that's just my thinking. But sure enough, cupbearer's restored. He goes back to the king. He is so ecstatic to be able to do his job again and be able to serve and not be in prison and definitely not be dead, right? That he forgets his promise to Joseph. And some 2 years go by, and then the king has a dream. Actually, he doesn't have one dream. He has two dreams, and he tells all his prophets, his soothsayers, all his right hand men, and they're like, "King, we don't know what this means. We can't tell you." And then at that time, the cupbearer says, "Wait. Hey, King, remember when you were mad at me and you kind of threw me in jail along with the baker? And well, you let me out and gave me and restored me my job, but you told the baker off of the head." Well, we had dreams. We both had dreams. And this guy Joseph, who's running the prison, I think he was Potiphar's helper at one time. Well, he interpreted our dreams, and it came exactly as what he said it would. I think this guy can help you out. So Pharaoh says, "Hey, go get this Joseph. I want to meet him." So they send for Joseph, tell him to clean up, shave up. And here little old Joseph is, not quite as young, not quite as naive as he once was. But he comes up, and he greets Pharaoh. And Pharaoh tells him his dilemma about these dreams. And he says, "Can you help me? I hear you can interpret dreams. Can you interpret these?" And I love Joseph's answer. "No, it's up to God to interpret dreams. But I can get you the answers you need." See, once again, Joseph is humble. Even before Pharaoh, that could literally save his neck, he doesn't elevate himself. He elevates God. He elevates God. And so the king or Pharaoh tells him his dreams, and Joseph said, "You know what? These two dreams mean the exact same thing." He said they're actually the same dream. They just appear differently, but they're the same dream. And Pharaoh says, "Great. What do they mean?" He says, "Well, Pharaoh, I got some great news for you." He says, "For 7 years, it's going to be a time of abundance. You're going to have so much stuff. The kingdom's going to thrive so much. You're not going to know what to do with it." And Pharaoh's like, "All right, this sounds wonderful." Wait, hold your horses now, Pharaoh. Wait a second. Don't get too excited, because God's about to show you something that he's going to do. And it's what you do with this is going to make all the difference in the world. So I know you're happy about having a time of abundance, but the next 7 years is going to be a time of extreme famine. There won't be enough. There won't be enough to go around. And Pharaoh's like, "Well, what should we do? I don't understand." And Joseph's like, "Well, you're going to have to put somebody in charge. You're going to have to," and keep in mind, Joseph never mentions his own name. "You're going to have to put some men in charge that can save up and can manage things properly during the time of plenty. When things are looking good, that's the time to get busy. That's the time to not take it for granted and not bask in the fruit of the riches, but to actually save up and be prepared." Pharaoh's like, "Well, I don't know who could do that. I mean, that's such a huge task. Who could possibly do that?" "Wait, you, Joseph, you have favor with God. You have wisdom. You're the man. You can make this happen." And so he says, "Go out and get my robe. As a matter of fact, here's my ring. You are the most powerful person in Egypt as of right now." He says, "Only by namesake am I Pharaoh. No man shall move without your consent, without your direction." Okay, I want to stop right there and pause. Do you realize how long it must have been and what Joseph must have been thinking? He went through being thrown in a pit and hated by his own family, to being sold into slavery, to riding that wave of being in charge of everything in Potiphar's house, to being falsely accused, and then being thrown in jail. Can you imagine what that roller coaster ride in that length of time, over that period of time? And so I want to stop right there for a second. Remember when I started out, that first message was all about purpose and vision? Here's what I want to take from this. Don't be disheartened when things don't appear as that vision. Don't be put out when things that you perceive is bad is happening. Don't give up on God's plan just because some time has went by. So sure enough, 7 years go by, or actually the very next year, Joseph starts planning and putting away. And it's not long until, well, they've got so much he can't even keep track of it anymore. And so he stops trying to keep track of it. There's so much abundance stored up in the cities that there's just no way to count it. There's not enough people. There's not enough resources. So they've stored up grain and goods. And then the next 7 years come. And just like Joseph said would happen, here comes a famine. Now we fast forward a little bit. A couple years go by. And Jacob, back over in Canaan, says, "Guys, sons, it's getting rough. I heard this story of a man in Egypt who can take care of us, who we can buy grain from. That way we won't starve and perish. We won't starve and die, right?" And so he tells his sons, all but one, "Hey, here's some silver. Make the journey. Go buy us enough grain to get through this, whatever it is." And so they do. They take off and they go. Now, keep in mind, when they get to Egypt, they come into the city, and Joseph is personally handling all the affairs of Pharaoh. He sees them. Is that who I think it is? No way. I think that's my brothers. Okay. His brothers come right up to him, and they don't recognize him. And why would they? Number one, he's many years older. Number two, actually, he's 13 years older to be exact. And number two, wait, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. He's 13 years older. And number two, he's now dressed in royalty. He's shaven. He's cleaned up. He's got the king's robe, the king's crest on his finger. How would you possibly recognize him? He also isn't speaking his native tongue. He's speaking Egyptian. Okay? That's very important later in the story. But his brothers, he recognizes him and he says, "Hey, who are you? What did you come here for? Did you come here to spy? I know you're not from here. I can tell you're not from Egypt. So what is your purpose here?" And they say, "Oh, we're your servants, and our father has sent us to buy grain from you." Your father, huh? Is he living? Oh yes, he lives. And is this all of you? Because I really think you're spies. Oh no. There's actually one more of us, and we were 12, but one died and one's back home with Dad. What happened to this other one? How'd he die? And they don't really tell him, right? They just said he perished. He died. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I don't trust you. I don't believe you, but I'm going to go ahead and sell you your grain. I still think you're spies, so you're going to have to prove it. If I see you again, your younger brother better be with you. Because that's going to prove to me that you're not spies and that you're telling me the truth. Okay. He tells his servants, he says, "Hey, not only fill up their grain sacks, give them enough provision also to get back home without touching the supplies, and then put all their silver back in their bags for them. And send them on their way. But don't let them know about the silver." So they go home. They get a few days out. They open their bags. What is this? The silver's still here. And they are both confused and frightened all at the same time. And they go home and they tell their dad. And, well, you got to go back. But you can't take it would kill me if you take him. You absolutely can't take him. You can't take the youngest brother. Well, this guy said that if we show up without our brother, he'll make us all slaves, or worse. It's not going to happen. Well, pretty soon they run out of grain again. Hey, you're going to have to go back. Well, they do. And they meet Joseph again. And Joseph, this time, invites them in to feast. And they are utterly confused. Matter of fact, they're terrified. Because they know that they had the silver from last time. But they were smart. They thought that there was a mistake or something, or that they were being set up. They didn't know. But they told the guards this, "Are you sure about this? Because we have all this silver from the last time we were here. And is this a setup or what?" And the guard says, "Nope. You come in and you feast." Now, the tradition was, keep in mind, Joseph has now been adopted as an Israelite, right? He can't dine with them. He can't eat with them. And they eat and they talk among themselves, and they're utterly confused. And Joseph says to his guard, he says, "All right, send them back out. Again, fill up their grain, fill their silver back up, but take my royal cup and place it in one of their bags, but don't let them know it." So they take off and go back to the dad. But before they get out of the city, or right out of the city, they get stopped. One of you is a thief. "Oh, no, it wasn't us. As a matter of fact, we can prove it wasn't us because, not only did we bring the silver back that you gave us, but we also brought more silver for the next supplies. So why would we steal from you? We're just your servants." And then they did kind of a foolish thing that I think Joseph was betting on. They say, "You know what? We're so convinced it wasn't us. We're honest men that you can search us. And if you find that cup, we'll all be your slaves." Well, little do they know, the cup was on one of them. It was planted there by Joseph's guard. Well, long story short, one gets to go back and tells Jacob. Now, in the midst of all this, Joseph can't take it anymore. He sends all his guards out, and he says, "Do you not realize who I am? Do you not realize it's me, Joseph, your brother?" And they are instantly terrified. And why wouldn't they be? Why wouldn't they be? They sold this kid, their own brother, into slavery and told their father that he was murdered. And now all this time has gone by. Can you imagine waiting 13 years to see God's promises come through? 13 years to see God's promises come through. That's exactly what happened. But Joseph, he remembers God's promise. He says, "Guys, I'm not mad at you. What you did for evil, God did to take care of you. In matter of fact, he didn't only use it to take care of you, he used me to save all of Egypt." He says, "See, guys, I'm not mad. I know you hated me, and I know you thought I was just some young punk kid with a loud mouth, and I probably was. But God had other plans." And so 13 years later, here Joseph is, not only saving Egypt, but saving his whole family. And that's what I want to share with you today, is never give up on your purpose that God's given you. Never say, "Oh, so much time has passed." Never say, "Oh, it is impossible." I can't imagine any of us being thrown into a pit by our own family. I mean, it might happen, I guess, not necessarily in no circumstances, but some of us, I guess, have been disowned by our own family. Some of us might have been even tried to be killed by our own family. But I don't think any of us can say we were ever sold into slavery, although I'm sure some of us have situations that feel similar. Maybe some of us have went to jail for something that we didn't do. Maybe, I don't know what the situation is for you. But what I can say is God is faithful. And it's how we go through the things. I fully believe that Joseph would have seen God's plan through. But how much longer than 13 years if he'd have given up, if he'd have losing hope, if he had thrown his hands up and said, "Nope, not going to happen"? What more suffering would he have had to go through? But instead, God blessed him. Can you imagine being in the worst possible situation, but being in the best of the worst? That's what Joseph was. He was in the worst possible situation, but he was in the absolute best of it. I mean, if you got to be in prison, at least be in charge of the prison, right? I mean, and that's what God did for him. If you got to be in Egypt, I mean, who wants to go to Egypt? Other than seeing the pyramids, it might be kind of cool. But other than that, it's hot, it's sandy. Who wants to go to Egypt? But here he is being the ruler of Egypt. Like I said, Pharaoh is only Pharaoh by name. Nothing even happens without Joseph's blessing. That gives me another thing to tell you. Pharaoh actually changed Joseph's name. Now, I won't be able to find it in here, and I definitely can't pronounce it without reading it. Probably can't even pronounce it with reading it. But when God gives you a promise, when you grab on that promise, he will change you. He will change your disposition. He'll change your outlook. In this case, it was represented by a physical name change. But he'll change you into the person he's going to use, into the person he needs you to be, to grow and to praise him and to worship him and follow his purpose. And it'll be for his glory. So today, I just want to encourage you. Every one of you, God has placed something in your hearts. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop believing that God can do it. Don't ever say, "Oh, look at my situation, it's horrible." Well, maybe it seems horrible, but the big picture, right? The big picture is God has a plan for it. And if you embrace that and you run with it, most of you know, I just lost my job. But guess what? God has a plan for that too, and He's already shown Himself faithful. I have to wonder if I'd taken my own advice here and I had to have listened to God when He first told me, "Hey, get ready, something's coming." If I wouldn't already be farther ahead than I am now. So when God throws those, or when God allows those things to happen, trust Him. Don't delay. Trust Him to do what He says and do it in the time that He says. Much like Joseph did. He never lost heart. I'm sure he had his bad days. We all do. I'm sure there was days Joseph didn't feel like getting up and serving the Lord and worshiping the Lord, but he did. He did it out of obedience. He did it out of love. So I just want to leave on this note. Keep your head up in all situations. Mikey, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't, but that was really good, Pastor, really good. I don't think I really have anything, just I'm soaking it all in here.
All right, well,
It's really good.
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe today you're going through some situations, maybe today you're going through some stuff. Maybe things don't seem like they're working out just how you planned them. We want to pray for you today. We want to pray that God would, reveal Himself to you and reveal part of His plan. I don't think God, I know. God revealed, like I told you last week, or 2 weeks ago, remember we talked about Peter? God sometimes will reveal the end results and never reveal how to get there to terrify you, and other time He'll only reveal the next step. So I don't know which of the two places you are right now, but whichever it is, we want to pray for you because God will see it through, even when you don't understand it. Is there anybody that say I'm going through some stuff right now, or maybe I just don't see my plan right now, the plan that God has for me, or the vision that God put there? Is there anybody like that today? No? All right. Well, let's close in prayer. Is Mr. Pete still here? Let's see. No. Mikey, would you mind closing us out in prayer?
No problem at all. That was an awesome word. I was so glad to hear that story again. It's been a long time since I heard that story, and that puts it in such perspective that God's back looking at the biggest picture, the big picture, and has His plan for us. And and Father, we come to you in Jesus' name, and we thank you for bringing this story to our remembrance today. We ask you please to help us to see ourselves wherever you have us in that story, whatever you would have us to learn from that story. Help us to see your provision, to see your hand at work in our lives, your hand at work in our family, your hand at work in our place of business, all the different spheres and influence places of our life. Father, we thank you that you and your sovereign power is available and at work in all these different areas of our life. And even to the extent that we may not be looking in a certain, we ask you please to open up our eyes to the places you would like us to go, and the places you're trying to take us, the places we don't know that are coming. Help us prepare for those places. Help us have the confidence to walk with our chin up as ambassadors to Christ in this earth, fulfilling the Great Commission. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Oh, well, thank you, Mikey.
You're welcome.
Well, guys, I guess you're dismissed. If y'all want to stay and hang out or in fellowship, maybe I don't know,